Every drawing tutorial on YouTube focuses on the fundamentals or above of illustration, as if the beginner has touched pen or pencil to paper before. But what about before the fundamentals? What about for those beginners who have never touched pen to paper before? And so if you're one of those beginners who needs the bare basics without the jargon, this video is for you.
Hi, my name's Cal. Thanks for coming on the journey with me.
So we're going to start with hand-eye coordination, because really before you're drawing at all, you need to understand how your brain and your eye relates to the pen and the pencil on paper. So you can practice this with basic lines, all kinds of basic line work and basic shapes. And I'm going to show you a few of those exercises right now. So first of all, with your line, here's a little practice tool for you so you can get used to the speed at which your lines look the best. Now, it depends on the length of line, but here's an example. A few dots spaced apart like this. So the first one we're going to draw really slow, the second one at a medium pace, and the third one really fast. Okay, so you can see some differences here. The first line where we drew slow is quite shaky. It's got a lot of bumps and shakes. It's a very hesitant line. It's not very good. The line in which we drew with sort of a medium velocity is quite straight. It's looking really good, more or less. The line where we drew really fast is gone wonky and off center and doesn't even meet the second circle here. And so as you can see, a medium speed is the best line that you can present. Now, slow, medium, and fast is going to be different for everybody. So that's why I say you should practice this. Put some dots apart and do some lines and do that, a few dozen times and just kind of get used to how the pen on the page or the tablet works for you. Another thing to sort of teach you about this is if you use like just your fingers. So if I just go tip here, finger to finger like this, that will draw me a short line, right? But if I do that again and try to make it longer, there you go, super wonky. Now, if I do it with my wrist, so from left to right with just my wrist like this, get a bit of a longer line, right? And quite straight. But if I try and do the entire page with my wrist, again, super wonky. And then you've got your full arm, right? Your full arm sweep. So the full arm sweep will do the entire page without any wonkiness. But if you try to do the full arm sweep for a small line, you might get like a little bit jagged or stuck on the table. Same with the wrist. So each thing works in its own way, right? You've got this one here, which is just using your fingers. You've got this one here, which is just using your wrist, turning your wrist. And you've got this one here, which is pushing your whole arm. So this is short, medium, and long lines. So that's another exercise you can practice when it comes to hand-eye coordination for your lines. And the third thing is just practicing 2D shapes. So we're talking triangles, squares, circles. You might find that when you're doing a circle, it's kind of like this, or it's not really meeting up very well. It's got this flat point or not meeting here. So you just go a little bit slower and just take your time and draw tons and tons of circles until you're feeling like, yep, they're looking pretty good. This one's just off, but it's not too bad. This one's pretty good. This one's great. And you just keep going and drawing those shapes. Same with squares. You want the corners to meet. Sometimes when you draw a square, see, look at that. My last line is overlapping. So now I know I need to stop a little bit shorter than I was. This is just teaching hand-eye coordination. And this is daily practice, shapes, because before you go to 3D, 2D is really the fundamental part of drawing. One of the practices you can do is something simple like this. Like these are pretty common drawings that you see from people, right? You've got like the fish or the star, and they've got all these structure lines internally, right, where the lines meet. Now what you want to do is you want to kind of be able to get rid of those structure lines. This is part of practicing 2D shapes, right? So you would just draw the outside section of that star. So instead of those structure lines, you want to sort of be able to draw a star like this. And this takes, some practice, of course, and you won't always get it perfect, but basically you want these lines to look like they're going to meet, Same with the fish here. You want those lines to sort of look like they're going to meet, but not meet. And this is all a part of just practicing your hand-eye coordination. moving on from hand-eye coordination, the second lesson, pre-fundamentals, is pencil. Right now, you want to start with using pencils. Now, I'm a big advocate for using pen because I like immortalizing my mistakes so that they can't be erased. But pencil is a great way to start because you can draw with really light lines, right? So when you start drawing with light lines, you can kind of erase all the things that you're doing as you go, right? Like you can do things like Loomis faces and things like this, and end up erasing all of this and just keeping, the outside of what you're drawing. And then obviously, your illustrations look better if you're able to erase that underlayer. So pencil is really important for this. It's also important because it helps you find the drawing. So, and that's basically all that sketching is, right? So, because you're just kind of trying to find shapes and figure out what you're doing. And in order to do that, you can't just rely on your hand and you can't just rely on your brain. You need to rely on them at the same time. And so, sketch lines and being a little bit rough and just kind of finding those shapes is how you go about that, right? Like, as you can see, I sort of went for a bicep here, and then I just went straight into a forearm, and I realized, no, that actually needs to be kind of curved a little bit for a forearm, need a bit of an elbow dent here. And so I'm finding those shapes and those lines as I go with the drawing. This is why pencil is really important, because if you're just doing this in pen, obviously all of it just ends up being super, super messy. It's hard to determine what's what. Whereas pencil, you can just kind of find stuff as you go. And just remembering that you're new to this, you don't even really know the fundamentals yet. And so you're just practicing. That's all it is practice. And so what better way to practice than to sketch? And so just, sketch every day, because the more that you sketch, the better you'll become at sort of figuring out your style and your shapes. And when you finally start learning the fundamentals, you kind of already have an idea on, how to draw these 2D shapes and what you want to do with your drawings. I sketch every day. Most professional artists sketch every day. It's good to just kind of keep a sketchbook or sketch on your phone or keep a drawing tablet or whatever it may be. Sketching's really fun. It can actually be more fun than drawing high quality final illustrations because there's less pressure, it's less intense, and it's just more about the kind of free flowing art. I actually really enjoy going through old sketchbooks or looking online on YouTube tutorials of people's sketchbooks on YouTube. I find sketches can sometimes be equally as gratifying as full-on professional illustrations. So don't be afraid to sketch, and don't be afraid to start with light lines, lots of mistakes, and using pencil. The next pre-fundamental thing that you should learn is tracing. This is basically how everybody starts drawing when they're children, right? Other than those basic hand-eye coordination, 2D shapes and lines, when you've got an image underneath your image, it's so much easier to learn where lines go, how lines meet, how shapes work, if you're tracing these images. I don't mean just mindlessly tracing them. I mean like sort of figuring out where it all is as you trace it. So like I figure out like, oh, okay, the arm curves like this, which when the arm curves like this, it's kind of showing me that there's like a three-dimensional quality to this body here, right? Like there's kind of like a 3D box behind this body and the arm's curving around the box. Now, I only know that there's that 3D quality because of the fact that the arm curves. And I'm learning that because I'm tracing what's already here. So you can just pull an image from the internet if you've got a drawing tablet like I've just done just here, or you can use tracing paper in the classic way that you would at school, or you can use a light box like professional comic book illustrators use, or more commonly these days, a projector to project the image onto your paper and then just draw on the paper. Now, either way, it's just about finding all these lines, right? So like, oh, okay, so I can see kind of the three-dimensional nature of this foot down here because of this line here that overlaps the other toe. Oh, yeah, there's a toe sort of in the background here. And now I've got this kind of three-dimensional nature of this leg, which, by the way, like most limbs on most animals, is really just a kind of big elongated cylinder. And same here, right? Like this is the kneecap here. So we've got kind of a cylinder behind the body here, which goes to the knee, and then at the kneecap, another cylinder which comes down here. It's just sort of about finding those kinds of shapes that make up objects. Now, all objects are made up by shapes, and that's one of the fundamentals that you will eventually learn, but you don't need to worry about that at this stage, because remember, we're not learning the fundamentals, we're learning the things before the fundamentals, which is just your basic hand-eye coordination, basic lines, basic where things meet, and just getting some of that practice, right? And so that's what we're doing. We're just getting some of that practice by tracing. If you trace things, you trace them as much as you can, and you trace them consciously, eventually that will start translating to when you're using images as a reference, right? When you start using reference images, you're going to be able to start doing things like this. Essentially, what tracing does is it gives you the ability to start drawing without wobbles or shakes or any of the issues that come with amateur penmanship, and start drawing with confidence. I'm talking about confidence in those lines, confidence in those shapes, and just confidence using a pen in general. Next up is using grids. Grids are where you finally graduate from tracing to using images as references. Grid drawings, you may have seen these also in elementary or primary schools. If you've never seen one before, basically what it is you're just copying piece by piece. So you're taking one small part of the grid and then translating it to your own drawing. And that way you can draw one grid at a time without focusing on the whole image at once. The reason this is important is because as an artist, even when you start seeing shapes and perspective and grids and all these other things in real life around you, you still, when you copy things or you copy reference images, are really only drawing small pieces at a time. You're drawing either large shapes and then all the details on these small chunks, or you're drawing all the small chunks from scratch first. It's very difficult as an artist to just draw an entire image as you see the entire image. Our entire brain looks at the whole image, and as you draw it on the paper, it gets kind of warped and skewed. And so you kind of have to break the image apart mentally and just kind of, okay, we start working on this part of the hair and then these eyes and then this part of the nose. So grids can be really helpful. Another thing that you can do to practice your skills before you move on to those fundamentals everybody talks about. Once you've tried all these exercises like tracing and grids and 2D shapes and line art, we can move on to repetition. Now, this is where you finally start drawing from your imagination. I want you to draw something from your imagination. It can be literally anything. Let's just say I'll try and draw like a real kind of amateur version of a duck. There you go. There's a duck. That's kind of like a duck I draw for my son on his little learning drawing tablet. This is a really amateur version of a duck, right? And I want you to choose something. It doesn't matter what it is. Let's say it's this duck, and I want you to draw it 100 times. I'm talking over and over and over again until you get used to all of those lines. You don't have to do it 100 times in one day. I'm talking just 100 times in general, right? And start improving it as you go. This is the important part, right? Is you need to start doing different things with the duck as you go. So I'm going to leave the original duck down here on the bottom right, and I'm just going to try and make like one improvement. So I'm going to start with I want to get rid of those structure lines on the neck and the body. There we go. And maybe make these legs a little bit more three-dimensional, right? Give him a little wing behind the body there. Still got structure lines on the beak here, but it's looking like a better duck already. Now let's try again. This time we're going to try and give it like a little bit of structure, make it a bit more three-dimensional, give it a beak, right? Make sure its beak is working well. Here's its neck behind its head because now it's a three-dimensional duck. Kind of some feather action here. Now we kind of got one foot in the background in the distance there, the body in front of that leg. So now we've got that 3D coming out. Give it this little neck pattern that ducks usually have. Then it would have another wing sort of coming off here. Right. Get rid of these little structure lines of this wing here. And now it's starting to look a little bit slowly more like the sketch of an actual duck. Give it some feathers as we go, right? Now imagine doing this 100 times, right? You start with something like this and you get to something like this. That's just within kind of a few renditions, right? But you do this 100 times and eventually you've got this incredible duck or incredible whatever it is that you've chosen to draw. And again, this is the same as tracing or grids or 2D shapes or all of these other things all these other exercises that we've been doing, it's for the same reason that we draw this thing from imagination 100 times. It's to give you confidence that you know how to draw, how to hold a pen, how to use that hand-eye coordination. Because once you're confident with the pen or the pencil and you kind of know what you're doing, at least generally speaking, then you can start learning the actual fundamental principles of drawing. I know a lot of people who have just kind of started with the fundamentals themselves, like form and shape and stuff, and they just get bored because they're drawing boxes and spheres and trying to learn anatomy, and all the characters they ever draw start out with that anatomical structure of cylinders and boxes and 3D, and then it's just a lot of work. It's a lot of really, really tiring work. For me, naturally, I didn't really get into the fundamentals of drawing until much later in life. So as a kid, I was just kind of doing all this, I was just kind of drawing characters of my own, like little sort of cartoon characters, and kind of getting the idea behind, 3D shapes, and all just by kind of copying references. And I didn't really know what any of it meant. And I did a lot of it wrong. But I was learning to hold the pen. I was learning to have that hand-eye coordination. And when it came time to learn the fundamentals, suddenly it wasn't so difficult. It was actually really exciting because now I could start applying things to the drawings I already would have done, except these things that I'm now applying are making my drawings so much better. Because fundamentals are generally not fun. They're just dementals. When you start learning the fundamentals like forms, perspective, and light and shadow, it really starts bringing those amateur drawing techniques and skills to an entirely new level. But instead of starting with forms, perspective, and light and shadow, start with really basic stuff and then apply those principles on top of the stuff you've already learned. It sounds counterintuitive, but it's a really fun and exciting way to learn art. And although you might pick up some bad habits and not be learning perfectly as you go, at least you're getting that confidence with your pen, getting those lines down, creating funny characters and awesome things. And then suddenly you're bringing those awesome things into the third dimension and into perspective and starting to use skills to elevate your art to an entirely new level. I hope this video helped any of you who are really just starting to get into drawing and want to get their feet wet. And if you enjoyed this video, please consider subscribing. I make a video every single week teaching you how to make art, or just hanging out with me while I make my own. I'll catch you in the next one.